An investigation by the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman has recommended that women against state pension inequality, more commonly known as WASPIs, are owed compensation at a cost of billions of pounds to you, the taxpayer. The long-awaited report recommended compensation for WASPI women, claiming the government failed adequately to communicate a change in the state pension age. But surely people have some responsibility for their own affairs. Post-pandemic, do we all expect to be spoon-fed by the government, incapable of taking our own decisions? Well, joining me to discuss this is my most intellectual panel, Paul Goodman and Nigel Nelson. Nigel, this was announced in 1995. It came out of a European court judgment that it was discriminatory to have two different retirement ages. It was expected initially that the government would cut the retirement age for men. Instead, it was raised for women, and it was announced that it would be done starting 15 years from the announcement and going on for 10 years beyond that. Don't people have some responsibility for making inquiries about their pension?
Yes, but if they don't know about it in the first place, and this seems to be the nub of what the Ombudsman is saying, that what the DWP didn't do was make it absolutely clear to the women involved that their pensions were going to change. Not enough was made about it in the press either.
But it was widely in the press and on the news.
It became widely in the press much later, but not at the time. Look, but the age group we're talking about, the women born in the 50s, this is my age group, so I knew a lot of these women. They didn't know about it. These were intelligent people. Many of them had never had the letter, didn't understand what was going on. And so why a proper campaign wasn't run to actually tell them what was happening, which is what the DWP should have done.
If the Chancellor in the budget says tax is going up 2p in the pound, and you don't listen to the budget, and then 2p is taken off your income, should you get it back because you didn't know?
Well, no, not in a situation like that. But what we're talking about is simply communication. And there wasn't enough communication. And then, of course, the goalposts were changed again back in 2011 under the Tories when they advanced everything 2 years.
They sped it up.
Yeah.
And increased it from 65 to 66.
Yeah.
But you can get in touch with the DWP and say, what is my pension going to be?
The argument from the Ombudsman is people tried. There are a number of people had complaints, they weren't sufficiently dealt with. The issue comes down to what you do about it now. My own feeling is this should actually go before the Work and Pension Select Committee to try and work out how that compensation could work. We're talking about phenomenal figures
Billions.
here.
Well, Jeremy Corbyn wanted to compensate everybody fully, and I think that was the best part of £50 billion.
Well, it would be 36 billion if it was at 10,000, but it's still nearly 8 billion if you're talking about 3,000.
Well, we don't have the money, do we?
See, as a former MP, I can't help looking at this through a political prism, and what occurs to me thinking about it immediately is that the stronger Labour's position in the polls gets, the worse this kind of problem is for them. And my understanding is today Labour have said nothing about this at all, because there's Rachel Reeves trying to construct a programme that will convince people you can safely elect a Labour government. Suddenly, £30 billion. I know we all chuck these figures around and sometimes don't appreciate the scale of them. This is a heck of a lot of money. Suddenly, she's faced potentially, if Labour win, with paying the bill.
And do you think, the point I was sort of hinting at, that since COVID, we've thought the government will do everything for us, and that this has influenced the Ombudsman, that people seem to expect to take no responsibility for their own circumstances, not even to the point of paying attention to newspapers?
This is
I think there's
I know this is, but the Ombudsman has come to his conclusion.
I think there's something in the point about COVID, but actually I pan the camera back, as it were, and think about this more broadly. There has been a general growth in the last 25 years or so in very important judgments being made by courts or by ombudsmen. Nigel and I were having a chat about this before the programme began. Now, this ruling will be widely welcomed, I bet. It'll be welcomed by the WASPI women, and I bet if you polled it, it would be popular. What does worry me about it, and worries you, is that we can't carry on ratcheting up these bills without someone sooner or later having to pay them.
And it's the standard of malfeasance that is required. So with Equitable Life, the FSA had told people to carry on putting money into Equitable, even though it knew it was bankrupt, because it thought if it got lots more money, it might just keep going. that seemed to me a really straightforward case of maladministration. The government takes some responsibility. This is, we're going to do something, it's been announced, it's had some publicity, you didn't know about it, perhaps we could have done a bit more to publicise it, but it's completely different scale from execrable life, infected blood, any of these other scandals.
We've still only paid out a few thousand,
which I think is pretty disgraceful. We've been very slow on that. Yeah.
We're not paying any compensation to the gay armed forces veterans who were wrongly jailed or thrown out of the army, navy, or air force.
And these are much stronger cases
because there's still the post office.
And the post office. It's going in the right direction, the post office, in fairness, but it takes a TV series to do it. When you mention the word scale, that's absolutely the point here. It's the scale of the number of women who didn't seem to know about this. And this is the bit that gets me. If you have this huge change coming down the track, they would talk amongst themselves. They would hear about what's going on, that a few would get letters, even if some letters went astray. These people did not know, and certainly did not know the implications of what they were getting into, which is why the DWP are at fault, and we've got to do something about now compensating them for the DWP's failure.
I think it's very difficult to make that jump because it's hard to see what their real loss is by not knowing. If they'd known, they'd still have got a lower pension.
No, I mean, it's not a question of the pensions. It's the fact that you couldn't make provision for those years that you weren't getting the pension. So it may well have been whether you tried to sort out working longer. There were people who suddenly found they couldn't pay the mortgage, ended up living with their families. There was a whole host of things that happened to those women as a direct result of this.
Of not knowing. I mean, there's...
Well, I think surely the central point about all this is the difference in expectations between the world of 1995 and the world of 2024. In the world of 2024, what Nigel is saying makes a lot of sense. You announce more, you do more to tell people what's going on, you have social media to consider, do you have to get your message out by social media? In 1995, it's just a sort of simpler world in which politicians exercise more power and courts and ombudsmen exercise less. And so we've projected back into that world of 1995, 2024 judgments, which is maybe not surprising.